Okay, is there a way to share? Hey, everybody.
Well,
We are here. We're doing a Facebook Live event. Please share it. We will have this posted on the CAN page in a little bit. We apologize for any delays. We had snow, technical difficulties, all of that. But we wanted to make sure we got this information to you. Just wanted to highlight CAN. Church and Community Abolition Network equips church, community, professionals, all kinds of people, students, to help prevent, detect, end, and heal local human trafficking. And what if I told you that the greatest weapon we have in the United States to prevent, detect, end, and heal local human trafficking was you? Like I said, I'm Mandy Leverett. Thank you, friends and family, for joining, hopping onto this. And make sure you share this. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. We will answer them during and after. We want this to be an ongoing resource for you. So one of the issues with human trafficking prevention is family, is creating those safe spaces. The front lines of human trafficking prevention really is family. I want to tell you about a friend of mine, we'll call her T. She's one of our survivor leaders in the survivor home we helped open here in New Jersey. But at the same time, we both lived in Norwalk, California. We were both teenagers and walking the same streets. The only difference between me and T was that I had family. As broken as my family was and as messed up as my family was, I had family. She didn't. At age 11. She went through the foster care system because her mother chose her boyfriend over her. And so she was on the streets. She was actually trafficked by foster house parents. She was trafficked throughout the system through gangs, the same streets that we were on. And so I want to highlight that because like I said, the front lines in protecting children is family. And right now, I know you ladies know, as part of your church, you've developed foster care as part of your anti-trafficking approach to protect children. And there are 4 really things that have made foster care, the need for foster care, really great, especially during the pandemic. And one is, first of all, I know you guys experienced, you had people in the docket ready to train with the state for foster care, and the state for basically 2 years stopped training new foster parents. So as the demand went higher, in fact, the demand, we know that for the first time ever, especially 2020, we had more reports of child abuse coming from children than adults. And so it went up exponentially. The border crisis has flooded every state with the need for unaccompanied minors, foster care for them. And then something unique has just happened with this new variant. Can you share about that?
Yes, concerning COVID.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now it creates a dynamic where people, even current foster parents, are scared to open up their homes. You have foster parents asking if a kid is testing positive. You have them asking to remove them because they're scared of them having COVID or the people in their household. So even current foster homes are not being able to take in new kids and asking to remove current placements in their home.
Right, which just exacerbates the whole situation. And so I wanted to highlight, you kind of wrote a manifesto of sort of the myths that keep people from becoming foster parents. They think I can't because fill in the blank. And I would love for you just to kind of share some of those things, because I think that's important. For me, they were eye-opening. And I know even right now, someone you guys know who came in as a CAN intern, who was a foster kid herself, who was adopted. She interned with our survivor home, ended up being employed in a different survivor home, met a bestie, and now the two of them, as best friends, have started to foster kids, and they were both former foster kids as well that were adopted. So it's a beautiful story, but a lot of people think, well, they can't because, a lot of those fill in the blanks. So can you tell us some of the obstacles that you've seen people use as not an excuse, but as a reason, I can't, I'm disqualified from that?
Yeah, so I think some of the main ones are I don't have enough money. I know that was something before I started where I was like, oh, I don't have a lot of extra money. I'm not going to have enough money for another kid. But the state provides all the funds for the kids in your home. So even healthcare is covered. So there's no cost to you for dental or any health concerns. You have monthly for food, for clothes. If you need anything extra, like childcare is provided as well. But if you ever have a need for something else, you can ask them, and a lot of times they're able to provide it. So really, all you have to be able to do is support yourself, have a safe place to live, a room for them. I think it's like 50 square foot of room for the child, and somewhere to put their clothes, and they will meet all the children's needs as far as that goes.
Yeah, I remember not thinking, I think it was funny because me and Hannah both came into foster care at the same time, and I remember both of us kind of being like, well, we would be single moms, that's weird, you know, to like, you know, but it's a need.
It is absolutely a need.
It is.
And so you're tearing up.
I am already.
So some of those obstacles, you had mentioned that sometimes even the state will provide if you need bunk beds or whatever, because the need is so great.
They were going to bring to my house a blow-up mattress for a COVID case last week.
So the need is so great.
So huge.
What has impacted your lives the most? I know some people are afraid, like if they have kids. I know you have kids. And I know I was advised early on when we were doing preparing for foster care by other foster parents and systems saying it's always best to have kids that come in to your home younger than your youngest. So because you know some have been sexually abused, but you were saying you know you can choose. You can say we can take special needs. We can take individuals who have been abused. What you can really choose. So you don't, all of the scenarios you think about that people think, oh, the demand is so high and your home and your love and your care is so needed. You can really, you know, kind of say, this is what we can handle right now. So how have you as your church, I know part of that, it breaks your heart, but at the same time, because it's not just individuals, but as the church has come around alongside you guys. They're your prayer support. They're all kinds of support. I know there are other churches that have foster care groups as small groups, and they have not just the fostering families, but everyone that's alongside them supporting them, and whether they're babysitters or whatever special areas they need help with. How has your church helped you as foster parents?
Yeah, it's overwhelming to just the amount, like knowing that I can call Hannah or call the number of other people. I have 10 people at my disposal at any moment that I can be like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck at work. Can you pick up my kids from school? You know, whatever. And they do. If you can't foster, there are other things you can do to help other foster parents.
Providing meals. I mean, I have so many people just like cook meals and bring it, which is huge, especially as a single parent, to just have someone bring you food, or like if you know a placement is coming in, you're like, hey, we need clothes this size, does anybody have it? There's a group chat, and anybody who has anything, baby stuff, if there's any like babies, just a whole community to like bring whatever you need. They'll drop it off at your door.
Right. So fostering within the church family really does provide more resources than maybe
more than I ever thought
you could do on your own, even. And even if you're hearing this and you think, well, maybe I'm not a part of a church family, I don't have that resource or whatever, there are still community resources available, and we can help plug in some things that might be close to you. Even though we're in New Jersey, these principles are true really for all foster states, and we'll have information in the comments below about how you find out about your state's foster care system and how you can get involved. One of the things you mentioned was you were still living with your family at the time. So that was one of the myths, that you have to like own your own home or have your own, like you didn't have that situation. You actually partnered with your parents initially.
Yeah, so initially I had moved out, and then I had been thinking about it for a while. I moved out, and then it pretty much, God was like, listen, you have no excuse. You have somewhere to live. You have family who will support you. You have enough money for everything you need. Anything else will be provided. But then there was also a period where me and my 3 kids were in with my parents. And it was just amazing to see even the difference in the kids. Like, I don't know, the support that you get, but the fact that is
not a barrier.
Yes.
It's not a barrier.
Yes, you can do it with your parents, you can do it with siblings, you can do it with friends.
You could just do it on your own.
I was like calling out the 18-year-olds in our church going, do you know you can foster children?
And
if your mom that will allow you to do it from
and like our friend, she, being a young lady herself, she understood the demand, but she also understood she could do it.
Yep.
And so we just want to let you know you can do this. I mean, there are very few things that will keep you from being eligible for fostering. And what a difference it makes. Can you share a personal story? Actually, before we get to that, I wanted to highlight also that not only have you been able to foster in general, but families in your church have been able to foster the children of women in the program in our local survivor home. So you can be very specific, and sometimes because even with that designation, sometimes you can be considered like family, so they can allow you to have a little flex in the requirements because you're providing a service for a relationship that you already have. So that's unique. And when it comes to human trafficking, sometimes, and addiction recovery, sometimes the thing that keeps an individual from getting help is, well, what's going to happen to my child if I don't have someone to take care of my child? So helping a church that builds that response, again, we help churches build a response comprehensive from prevention all the way to survivor reentry, which your church is also involved with as well. So we help remove those obstacles with what we already have. You have a house. You have a resource. You have, it may not be the perfect, ideal situation, but it provides that protective family for a kid that is highest at risk for human trafficking. So how does foster care relate to human trafficking? Well, human trafficking is the commercial exploitation of an individual by the use of force, fraud, or coercion for either sex or labor trafficking. By commercial, it means that it has to exchange money, goods, or services. And to be considered human trafficking by the state or federal law, it requires those three indicators, the fraud, coercion, fraud. And so in those situations, but unless it is a minor, and sex trafficking, you don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion for them to be considered a victim of human trafficking. So the most common risk factor is simply being young. The typical age range where victims enter into sex trafficking in particular is 11 to 14. That's 5th grade to 9th grade. So you talk about prevention, all of those spaces. Our friend T, she was on the lower end. Of course, victims have been victimized before age 11 and after age 14, but we do, in our over 30 years of service provision, we do find that that age range really accurate. 83% of the victims of human trafficking in the U.S. are our own citizens. That rings true with our service provision as well. But those most common risk factors, simply being young, having been sexually violated. We know the stats, 1 in 3 females and 1 in 5 males by the time they reach 18, American citizens, will have been sexually violated. That's a whole lot of us. So we're talking about high-risk groups, but the most vulnerable and the most high-risk groups are kids in foster care, kids without family. And so if you want to get in the area of helping prevent human trafficking, you can become a foster care parent. You can also, we talk about other resources like Child Court Advocacy, CASA, also Rural Family Kids camps during the summer, and then all of these spaces where you can support your local community's adoptive or foster children, families. So this is an important space that you can join in on. You can certainly participate, pray, and partner in all of these ways. But I just wanted to kind of let you know that this is available to you. But do you have a story of something that the foster care experience has enlightened you in a certain way that you didn't expect, or challenged you, or encouraged you?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, getting back to, the things that you think are barriers that are not, like, I'm a single mom, so is Hannah. And then also into I think we both started out with yeah, we could foster kids, bring me a baby. That's easy, let's do that. And then the more you learn about it, the more you go, well, the older kids are really a bigger need. Maybe I could go as old as 7. And then you got a call and it's a 9-year-old. And you're like, I could take a 9-year-old, And then before you know it, you're like, 16 and pregnant? That's not so bad. It goes and it does. It's just God will work on what he needs you for, Yeah.
What about you?
I think one of the main things that it's just opened up is that, they're kids, just like my nieces and nephews, just like, my brothers and sisters, they're children. And you have terms in the foster care system like hard to place, or different things that kids are labeled with. And
Even just calling it a placement.
Yes,
Like
which we do it.
We do it all the time. I got a call for a placement today
Because it
like,
almost lessens it.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they are kids and they're experiencing trauma, and there's a lot of stigmatism on foster kids, on like behavioral and all of these things, and we don't count the trauma and a lot of the kids struggle with PTSD. They're children that are struggling with post-traumatic stress because of the things that they've seen, the things that they've experienced, and they just need love. They just need someone to show them, hey, this is how we respect people, this is how we treat people, this is your home for however long you need it. Like, you're a child who deserves love. Just like if something happened to one of my nieces and nephews, how I would want someone to give them a home. I would want someone to treat them like their own. These kids need that. There's such a huge need for love, not just a place to lay your head, but to love them, whether it's for a week, whether it's for a couple months, whether it's for a couple years. Like, they are children and they are worthy and deserving of love.
It's amazing. Now, I know as a parent, you're a parent as well. I mean, you're both parents, but as far as you have your own biological children. And I know that sometimes when you're fostering, sometimes there are guidelines that might be different than how you're raising your children.
Yeah.
I think of one area that has to do with human trafficking, which is cell phone access and apps and social media that create a vulnerability. And for my children, I can put those protections and I put those guidelines. But if a foster kid has been given a cell phone, for example, that they want full access to the social media that without your guidance, right? Because it's not your phone. You can't put protections on it. Someone else has those controls. How does that, that's just one example, but what does it look like to parent kids that have different guidelines in your home than your own kids? Like, how do you navigate that space?
Right. That's always, oh my goodness. It's like, I don't know. It is difficult. It does create a difference, right? But also, I think a lot of the times we underestimate the kids coming in and their ability to adapt. And the fact that, a lot of the times they do just want to be obedient and be, so a lot of the times you can say, I'd really prefer that you put your cell phone away. And I've heard, I haven't had teenage placements yet, but I have heard that teenagers are a lot easier than little kids, because a little kid, you tell them to stop doing something, they don't typically listen. Older kids feel like they just want to, I think a lot of the times they associate obedience with love, and that if I'm not listening, then they're not gonna want me. So it actually, a discipline, I think, becomes easier when they're older. But when they're younger and, you're thinking about things like punishments and taking things away, I haven't really had any issues with that. I don't know, you can talk to Hannah about it too, but I haven't had any issues with taking things away. And I think also the division, I haven't run into a cell phone issue, but I think with the division, if a child's been given a cell phone and you say they're using it inappropriately, and can prove that, then I don't think the division would have an issue with you taking it away, right?
Yeah,
I think
I'd probably say the same thing.
Yeah, I'd have to double check on it, but it's one thing to take a kid's cell phone away because you don't want them to have it, but I think it's a different thing if you're going there they're not being responsible with it. Because the division they give us a lot more than they used to parenting abilities.
Why is the difference? You said a lot.
I don't know. I had so my oldest 3 children were in the foster care system, and they're actually my nephews. But there were a lot of barriers, I think, before, and they've given a lot more leeway. There used to be you're not if you wanted to have your foster children sleep over a friend's house, it was that was completely unallowed because those people weren't checked.
Right.
Where they've completely torn down those walls and gone, if you trust them, if you've been checked and you trust this other family to watch your children for the night, that's fine. Okay. So there's a lot of things like that have changed. They have changed so much in if you look at the last 20 years, they've tried, seen things that failed, went back to the old way, or tried and see something works, and they're like, all right, let's do it. They have so much. Like, I mean, I was going through stuff with Hannah before. They have like the family preservation unit where they will like try so hard to keep a family together, to the point where they're like, you know, there's not enough bedrooms in your house. Well, this one's really big. Let's put a wall up and, you know, make like, you know, they just, there's so many things that they're doing for families to try and keep them together. Yeah.
Well, frankly, I don't think there's one state that has enough beds or resources for their own foster care. Right. And now with all of the 4 different things that we just expressed in the last 2 years, that has just put so much pressure on families. I think that's an important part of the conversation. And if you're watching and you're in a different state than the state of New Jersey, you can find out what your state requires. We'll have information in the comments below about contacting your specific state. We'll have that link there as well. If you have any questions, we will continue to answer them. I know we've got to get going, but as far as your experience overall, what would you say is one of like the biggest takeaways that maybe we didn't cover in the Q&A?
One of the biggest takeaways. I think that never underestimate the impact that you can have on someone's life, especially a child. And do your research. I always tell people, go to a foster care orientation if you can. Because for me, I went to an orientation and I was not expecting to sign up that day. And I went and I was like, nope, I have to do this because there is a need for this. And anything that I can say to say, no, I can't do this now, or I should wait, pure selfishness. When you think about a child who has no one in their corner, no one to love them, no one to meet their just basic needs, and the impact that you can make on their life. Just, you know, even snuggles. I think about my kids, how important snuggles were when they came. Physical touch, words of affirmation, letting them know that they're loved, you know.
Just being safe.
Things that, yes, just having rules even, you know. Kids don't like rules, but also when you have a kid who hasn't had rules, it's almost like, I don't know, it's weird.
They do. They like the rules.
I can tell you that for me, that I came from a difficult home situation with no rules, basically. And you feel safe when there are boundaries. You feel safe when there are adults that care and will check you on those boundaries.
And I find that the kids will remind me of the rules that I've made. Where I'll say, like, this isn't allowed, and then, you know, if somebody else is doing it, and they'll tell on them, and I'll go, okay, like, I'm busy doing something right now, and they're like, but you said that this was a rule, and I'm like, oh, I did say that, and I need to follow through on that. The kids check me too. So yeah,
and just like there's situations where that have arisen that I have no idea how I handled them. Like, I had no knowledge of this. I don't even know how, but it's
completely
like God gives you wisdom.
Yes,
completely
God
unqualified. Like, I think we all assume that we're unqualified, and we all are. I'm unqualified. Danielle's unqualified. But we saw the need, and we knew that God was calling us to do it. And so every step of the way, it's like, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this situation. They're telling me this. I have to report this. You know, it puts you in uncomfortable situations, but it's for a reason. And if you can touch one kid, if you can, I don't know, just show them that there's a different way and make an impact on their life. Like, that's all. That's it.
Yep. And I think normalizing foster parenting is huge. Like, you turn, how old? 17 years old, you get your license. You know, I feel like
in New Jersey, I know a lot of states like 16 and even 15.
17 years old in New Jersey. But like, there are certain, you know, mile marks that you pass, and you get to do this now. You know, you're grown and you get to do this. I think foster care is like, you can sign up to be a foster parent and be now qualified and registered with the state as you are a home. And I mean, what happens when you do that is they call you and they say, hey, I have a kid, you know, and this is what's going on with this child. Do you have a place for this kid? And you can say yes, and you can say no, and you can say, let me pray about it and call you back. And I think
you can do weekends.
You can close your home for 6 months if you want to, a year, 2 years. You know, you can close your home and open your home. But I think having that certification is huge. even like Hannah was saying for her nephews and nieces, when I didn't have those certifications and my nephews came into a place where they needed a placement, I had to then run out and go scrambling trying to, get this done for my nephews.
How long was that process of certification?
Certification, when we registered like 3 years ago, it was 4 weeks, 8 classes. So we did 2 classes a week for 4 weeks over the summer. And that was it. Yeah. We were done with our training. They call it Pride training. We were done with our training, and then they come and do a home study. They like make sure that you don't have any like unlocked guns, or you don't have medications laying all over the place, stuff like that. Yeah.
And even the need, the week that I got like the cleared, like your home is ready, your training's done. The week that I got it done, I got my first placement. Mm-hmm. I think it was 3 days later. I got a call. They said, "Hey, can we bring this child to you on Monday?" And that's huge.
Now, I know that the purpose of foster care is different than adoption. Some foster children are eventually adopted by families. It just depends. Mm-hmm. But the ultimate goal of the foster care system is reunification. And we understand that. And so I know, but that's also difficult on your heart, because you have to let go someone that you've grown to love. And so can you talk about that just for a sec?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard, even when the kids go to their visits, the trauma that they experience even with that. Like, they're excited to see their parents, but also it just brings back all the things. So even after visits, the evening after their visits, it's always chaos. Like, there's behaviors, there's this and there's that, because they're experiencing it every week. But it is, I mean, there's so many times I would go upstairs and I would just cry to Danielle, and I would be like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. It's hard, but when, I don't know, I think about my 3 kids and not knowing them and not having them with me, even if it was only going to be for a month, like they just completely changed my outlook and my whole life, that even if they were going to be taken away tomorrow, like, it would be worth it. So, like, it's definitely hard. I'm not going to lie. It's a constant emotional, you just, so many tears, so many like frustrations, but I wouldn't trade it. No.
I have friends that have actually, one survivor friend who was a foster parent for a long time, and just all of those foster kids are all adult kids, just like her own biological kids. And even though she never adopted them, they were always family. Like, there was, I don't know if you remember Hurricane Irene, we were going to actually stay at their house for a little bit because there were no hotels open and our home was flooded. And then they're like, oh, but my foster son, he needs it for, it's like, okay, yes, we understand. But they stay connected a lot of times, and that investment in lives is just so rich, and it just starts with extending your table, like just using what you have. I know the first victim of human trafficking I ever assisted, I was a teenager leading a prayer meeting. The only resource I had was my family and my home, and because of, it's a long story, but because of a homeless Vietnam veteran that we were assisting, he brought this girl into our life. She was a 16-year-old girl in the state of Washington, and she was the story of what fell through the cracks back then. She was the age of consent. There were no human trafficking laws, and her much older boyfriend was selling her. And we helped rescue her just with what we had and the resources we had. And that started our anti-trafficking journey. Since then, we have a lot more resources, and we equip now churches and community and professionals and individuals with all sorts of best practice resources, and collaborate with some amazing organizations to bring in gap services like Hoving Home, which you guys have been a part of here. But I want us all to walk away from this conversation with the idea that I can. And I think sometimes we want to protect our hearts, and we're afraid. And I think more than anything, fear stops us from reaching out. And so I wanted this to be an encouraging conversation that you really can. Like I said, there are very few situations that would prohibit you from becoming a foster care resource in your community, in your state. We'll put that information on the link for your state specifically, so that you can engage. I thank you all for coming along. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, and then the snow, and then we're literally in a car because they couldn't. We're just like, can you drive over here? Let's do this. And, but thank you for engaging in this conversation. Like I said, foster care is at the heart of preventing human trafficking. And we're going to continue this conversation. Some people might be in that space of, well, I don't have, an extra room, or I don't have, but there are places you can get involved additionally, and we will highlight those as well throughout, all the time, really. We highlight those things. So follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/can.abolition. We will put this on that page as well. But we want to encourage you. There's so much that you can do to help prevent, detect, and heal local human trafficking. So canfreedom.org. Thank you all for joining us, and sorry about the technical issues. Okay.
All right.
Bye
let's
now.
see if we can actually